Welcome in to a special edition of the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It's Jeremy Werner, and I'm joined by Mike LaTulip, Illini Inquirer basketball analyst, and Isaac Trotter, 24/7 Sports college basketball writer. I guess this is our Big Ten offseason roundtable. That's what we're calling it. Basically, I just brought these guys on to sort out for myself what the heck is the Big Ten basketball outlook look like, because I'm trying to figure this out, and I figured many Illini fans would think the same thing. So I appreciate you guys jumping on. Mike, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. You guys will probably get some peek behind the curtain to some of, I think, all of our texts throughout the season and throughout the offseason. So this is great.
Yeah, it's basically bringing the text threads into podcast form. Isaac Trotter, how are you, buddy? Continue to do the great work. Appreciated the breaking down every transfer player. That did take some time.
Yeah, no, I am recovering from that. I just got done with the SEC one today too. So I'm just in a little bit of a coma. I think I just have refreshed Synergy 100 times in a row in the last 6 days. So it's been a lot, but it's super fun. And yeah, somebody reached out to me because they heard Mike talking on the podcast. They're about our texts. And they're like, do you want to read those out loud, on a show? And I was like, well, good thing for you. We got something coming right up. Don't you wait? Just you wait.
Yeah. So guys, this is kind of before we get into these topics, I'm breaking these up by topics. And if by the end you want to throw out your projections, that would be cool too. But how much research goes into what these teams actually are, Mike? Because there's so much movement with these teams and trying to figure out who could be good and who might not be. I know we're getting used to this every year, but this year more than any, especially 4 new teams coming into the league.
Yeah, in short, a lot. A lot goes into it. And part of that is because if you want to get a true sense of what these teams are, you have to not only, for a lot of them, it doesn't matter watching last year's team, because I can watch last year's USC team. It's a completely different team with a new coach and 12 new players or whatever it is. So you got to go through one by one and watch all the players and see how they fit and try to come to some sort of conclusion, which, people can have their opinions on conclusions in July, but I do think there's things that you can definitely project because there's history that I think, proves certain things. And there's been things in the past, whether it's, hey, how many Big Ten champions have returned one starter from the previous season? How many have returned 0? How many have returned 2 or 3? And figuring all that out to try to assess, okay, when I do my top 18 or when I power rank these teams, you have to have all those things in mind. And I think that's what gets baked into all this. But in short, yeah, it's a lot, but it's fun as heck.
All right, before we get into this, Trotter, what do you look for? What are you looking for that makes a successful, rebuild or retool as all these teams are doing nowadays?
Yeah, I'm really kind of trying to find out what your idea is of what type of roster you're trying to build. Because I think in the portal, it's super fun. We added this guy, he averaged 15 points a game. And we got this guy, he averaged 12 points a game. And this guy, oh, wow, he averaged 17. It's that's just not how this is going to work. And so, one tool that I think I've been using a little bit more is just trying to find the actual role that these guys play. And just kind of putting them together that way of all right, is he a stretch 4? Is he a small ball 5? Is this a combo guard? Is this a shooting guard? And just kind of figuring it out that way. That has helped me compartmentalize some of these teams and kind of break some of these teams down. And it's hard because my biases right now have been for the last couple of cycles. I really want to know about the transfers, and I don't really care about the freshmen because for the most part, college basketball has kind of been run by returners and transfers. And I think I'm having a hard time with it in this cycle because the freshmen that are coming into the league are really, really good. And I'm having a hard time figuring out how much we have to weigh those versus some of these elite transfers that are making more money, but might not be as impactful as some of the freshmen that are coming in.
All right, Mike. So I'll kick off the categories with you. And this is, you can take this anywhere you want based on fit, talent that they've accrued. Who had the best offseason? The best offseason award goes to who in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, this is tough because when I went and broke it down, it was really hard for really all these categories to have one team. So I'm not going to give you 4 right now. I'll start one off here and we'll have some conversation around it. And I people may roll their eyes when they hear this, but I think it's Illinois. Right? I think, you lost an unbelievable amount of production. And to be able to put yourself back in the conversation, because that's what they are. Like, they're in the conversation for potentially, I think, winning the league. And the way they did it, where you kind of straddle two different, I guess, ideals, right? Like, you set yourself up to make this a long-term play with some of these guys, where you have multi-year Kylan Boswell and Trey White and Kerry Booth and obviously Morez Johnson, the freshman that they're bringing in. You got, more of an older, stable piece like a Humrick House and then the blue chip guys, Will Riley and Kasparis, dipping into the overseas pond where you get Kasparis and you get Tomi Avicic and you start to continue to make inroads over there. Like, I think they've casted all these different, I guess, nets, right? And I think, they're not pot committed to one particular way like they were last year, where it was, hey, let's just get old and make that second weekend come hell or high water. So I think the way they've brought in an influx of talent to be, I think, successful this year, while also setting themselves up for the future, is why they to me have had the best offseason.
Isaac, who do you think?
I went with Michigan just because I factored in the coaching as well, because I felt like there were some real questions about who Michigan was going to be able to hire. And Dusty May wasn't necessarily the guy that a lot of people had mentioned or circled for that job. They were looking at like a lot of different spots. Like Dusty May to Vanderbilt had a lot of legs. Dusty May to Ohio State had a lot of legs. Like Dusty May to Louisville had a lot of legs. And so Michigan able to come in and get him is a game changer, and why I put them a little bit over the top for me, just because when you factor in just that coaching addition and what they've done in the portal, kind of revamping this roster and just kind of getting a fresh new group in there, especially after all of the drama that's kind of gone on over the last couple of years, I felt like they've done a good job of not only building themselves a position to be competitive right away. Like, I don't know if they're going to win the league. I think they're in the conversation maybe to be like a top 5 team in the Big Ten and then see a tournament team. But like in the future, like you have a potential rock star in Dusty May. And I think Ohio State, like we're going to be comparing both of those programs for a while, because their decision to keep Jake Diebler instead of maybe prioritize Dusty May and Michigan going to get him, like it looks like Michigan's a winner right now. Does that mean they're a winner in 2 years? I don't know. But I felt like they were, a huge program elevator, because where they were in the middle of last season, the apathy that had set in and just the frustration around that program, it was dire there. It was really, really dire there. And I think the mood there has changed a lot in, 6 months.
Yeah, to give Vlad Golden to steal Roddy Gale from Ohio State. Like, I thought the point was to keep all those players at Ohio State, and they get Roddy Gale and Danny Wolf obviously was a big addition. Mike, I know you had some others. So who else were you considering for this?
Yeah, I mean, I considered Indiana just because when you look at the personnel, right, I think they've had such an imbalanced personnel over the years. And if you look at what Indiana teams have been successful in the last, call it 12 years, the ones that have a point guard, right? It's Yogi when they won it in 2016, and it's Jalen Hood-Schifino when you were questioning kind of what that team was going to look like. Everybody predicted them to kind of win the league 2 years ago. And, they were coming off of a 9-11 season the year before. And, I think they surprised some people because of Jalen Hood-Schifino. So now this year, obviously Umar Ballo, it's a big pickup, right? When you look at portal rankings and where they rank, like that is be quote unquote their biggest pickup of the offseason. But in my eyes, it was Miles Rice. Like he was the biggest pickup for them because of the importance of that position. The importance that position has for that program and what it's meant for winning over the years. So now comes into the question of how Mike Woodson utilizes those pieces and, the rotations, and is he going to play two bigs? I think the way that roster's constructed, I think he's going to. I don't see a world where Malik Renew comes off the bench. I think that's their 4-5 and Baco's at the 3. And then you'll see what happens. I'd imagine Galloway starts at the 2 and you go Carlisle off the bench and start Rice. But I'm just really fascinated to see what that looks like, because I think, and even the addition of Luke Goody, we'll see what the minutes look like. But I do like the idea, like a Nick Zeisloft, way back when, Miller Kopp, like when they've gotten guys that have been like specialty guys, they've had success with those as well. So, Miller Kopp and Nick Zeisloff were part of those other two teams that I think have been the two best Indiana teams of the last probably 10 years. You go further back, you got the Zeller Oladipo team, but to put themselves back in the conversation, I think to potentially win the league is huge based off of what February looked like last year when people were, and really parts of March when people were running Mike Woodson out of town.
The funny thing too is like at Washington State, they played two bigs all the time too. So Miles Rice going to play with two bigs at Indiana is like, okay, like I'm cool with that. Like I'm normal with that. Like I'm down. So that I'm kind of right there with you. I think that if you're kind of power ranking, like who's their most impactful transfers, Rice is pretty clearly number one. Like the intel on him is off the charts. Again, like if you don't know the backstory, beating cancer, last year was his first year playing college basketball after the diagnosis and after fighting his way back, just an electric first step off the bounce. He's terrific. Like he's getting so much better as well too. So I think Indiana is definitely a winner. I think that they're probably like one of the most like 15 talented teams in college basketball, maybe the most talented team in the Big Ten. And yet I don't know if I would rank them inside my top 15 nationally because there's some questions about if Mike Woodson can maximize this group.
I'm sure that'll be a part of our conversation with the Big Ten title favorite here coming up. All right. On the flip side of best offseason, who had the worst offseason? I'll start with you, Trotter.
Yeah, I went with Wisconsin. Just the fact that, you lose an AJ Storr, who you did a really good job of finding in the portal and prioritizing him and maybe seeing a little diamond in the rough with some of the iffy tape out of St. John's. And then what they were able to build him up into, that's a huge loss. And the way it ended and the way he exited made it feel like you're kind of like a poverty program a little bit too. Like, hey, like Wisconsin doesn't have money. Like I'm going to go to a better place. Like that hurts your brand. And then Chucky Hepburn does the same thing. And so like when you lose both of those guys, along with some of the other exits that they've had, like they've gone in the portal, like Xavier Amos, I can talk myself into him offensively. His defensive tape is a disaster, but some of the stuff offensively that he does, like he's way more skilled than Tyler Wall was, but he doesn't do any of the little things that Tyler Wall did really well. Cameron Hunter, year off last year after an injury, like we'll see how that works, transferring up from Central Arkansas. John Tonje, if you watch his Colorado State film, you're like, okay, I like this, but why did it go so wrong last year at Mizzou? So I feel like Wisconsin's a solid team, but their rep and their brand has definitely taken a little bit of a hit after AJ and Chucky have left, and the way they left and why they left. It just doesn't make you feel like you're like the Wisconsin that I remember in the mid 2010s of like, hey, we're one of the best programs in college basketball and we're going to go compete for a national title. It's
amazing how well Greg Gard has done there over the long run, yet there's always like this, is he going to be there long term? Like, is this going to last a long time? So it's amazing as many Big Ten games as he's won, that you still kind of have some doubts about where it goes, but never count out Wisconsin. That's one thing I've learned. Mike, who do you think had the worst offseason?
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on Wisconsin real quick. I mean, I think to lose Storr and Hepburn and just in my opinion, to not replenish that in really any way, shape, or form, when you're already a team, like they were sliding last year. I know they obviously made it to the Big Ten tournament championship, but that, February was kind of rough for them. So I'm curious to see what that looks like, because I do think that the middle of the Big Ten is kind of underrated. We don't know what to do with the top, but I think from like 5 to 13, maybe even 5 to 15, there's a chance that I think the league ends up kind of cannibalizing itself. So what these teams do in non-conference obviously will factor into that. My worst offseason went to Michigan State. And honestly, Jeremy, I think we did this last year, and I think I said Michigan State last year too. And part of it for me is another dormant year in the portal, right? Frankie Fiddler's really good. I really like Frankie Fiddler. I think like what he's going to be able to do for Michigan State and where they put him, I think is going to determine like what he ends up actually being. He's not going to get anywhere near the usage he got at Nebraska Omaha, and whether they decide to put him at the 4, do they put him at the 3, if they want to start Booker and Cooper together and slide him down, like I'm curious to see where they put him. And when I say really good, like I think he can be like a 11 to 13 point per game guy. I certainly don't think he's like a first or second all Big Ten guy, but I think he's a good enough player to, even if he has to have a reduced role, can find a way to be efficient. So look, Michigan State is they're better. Like the league is better when Michigan State is contending and when they're in the mix. And for whatever reason, Tom Izzo, like not finding a way to, you don't have a salary cap. You know, you could look at it and say, maybe you do based off of NIL funds, but there really doesn't seem to be like a true effort to be like, hey, let's put ourselves in the conversation, right? Let's go get guys. And if your argument is like, well, hey, let's see what Kurt Tang does and see what Jace Richardson does, that's just a lot to, you know, to put on freshmen's shoulders. When I think the talent as a whole for Michigan State isn't, I think, what we're used to over the years. I think it's a less talented team than last year. It's
just complete stubbornness, right? That I'm gonna give the team to Xavier Booker and Jeremy Fears Jr. and Cohen Carr, and those guys are talented. And Jaden Akins, but like you're counting on Jaden Akins to be your star, or Trey Holloman to take a star leap. I don't see that.
Who is their guy?
Great question, Isaac. Who you got? Booker?
Well, it's going to be Jaden. Like Akins is the most proven high major player that they have on the roster right now. But like, I have a ton of questions about him, and I love Jaden Akins. Like I thought that he was awesome from the beginning, but I kind of fell in love with like the lefty hammer dunks and then like the deep threes. You kind of dig into his tape. You're like, wait, how many shots has he got in the half court situation at the rim? Like there's not many. He doesn't get to the rim. Like there's not that like dynamic off the dribble lead guard creation that we've seen from him. And so you replace the Tyson Walker with what? Like you're banking on Trey Holloman being better. You know, we talk about these freshmen. Like I like the freshman tape too for Michigan State, but like look at the history of freshmen coming into Michigan State. None of them really exceed expectations in the last few years. Like it's hard for them there. Like the expectations are high. So I'm kind of with you. I feel like Michigan State leaves me wanting a little bit more. And like the Fiddler stuff, like he doesn't create any separation. Like it feels like he's gonna have to make a lot of tough shots for this to work. And that's like kind of the whole MO with this group. Like they don't have like that, like guy on the wing who's going to be able to go get a bucket whenever he wants or get to the free throw line whenever he wants.
Like Mike, I think last year he didn't have to go make 3 transfer additions. I was like, just go find your rink mast and fill that role, and your team can be really, really good again. And it's just, they were one move away. And again, this offseason, maybe it's 2 moves away this offseason, but it was like, you are Michigan State. You can go get a star and still have these guys fit in around him. I don't know why he hasn't married it. I get why he doesn't want to do what Illinois is or Indiana is maybe, but like you can still add some good pieces and help your team.
Well, and especially at the 5 spot, right? And if your argument at the 5 spot is like, well, hey, maybe he believes in Booker. It's like, I don't know. I watched last year. It didn't look like he believed a whole lot in.
That's my thing.
Like, so
if you believed in Xavier Booker, last year should have been a developmental year for him. Get him
he
some.
Should have played a ton. He should like and take his lumps and because there were definitely flashes, right? I mean, he was a really, really highly touted recruit. So I'm not there in the locker room every day. I'm not there in the practice facility every day, but most times, right, in my experience, if there's somebody that is a highly touted freshman and they're not getting the minutes that you think that they should get, it's one of 2 things. It's defense or it's something going on that we don't see. Mm-hmm. I don't know which one it is with Xavier Booker, but I would imagine it would be one of the 2. So if he figures that out, right? Like if it is something off the court, or I should say like in the practice gym, if you want to call it that, then maybe he turns a corner in that sense and finds more time. And if it's the defensive side, like maybe it's an offseason of bulking up because the tools are there. I mean, he's got the length, he's got the athleticism. And I think it's just more so having Tom Izzo and that staff be like, hey, this is our actual plan for you. And this is the way we think we can develop you into a really good player. Because I mean, there's been a lot of good bigs, right, that have come through Michigan State over the last 20 years.
Well, if you're talking yourself into Michigan State this year too, it is defense. That's why they're great. Like they will tell you that Carson Cooper's a really good perimeter, interior defender. They'll tell you Jeremy Fears, they expect him to be a really good defender. Trey Holloman, good perimeter defender. Jaden Akins, we've seen that from him defensively. So like that's like what the bullish point of Michigan State is. Like our defense is going to be good enough. We're going to turn you over. We're going to play with great effort, and we're going to score in transition, and we're going to hope to God to pray that we can figure something out in half court offense. Like that's like the game plan. But like I think as we've seen the sport kind of change, sometimes that hasn't necessarily worked for a lot of teams. Like you have to be elite on the offensive end in the half court. Like you have to, if you really want to contend and win championships. And I think we saw that last year with, Purdue was elite offensively and Illinois was elite offensively and Alabama was elite offensively and UConn was elite offensively. And that's why, those teams were in the Elite Eight in the Final Four and won the national title.
Well, I mean, look at Rutgers too,
right? Like Tyson Walker was the guy who bailed them out in that half court if they could score. But go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just saying, look at Rutgers offseason. Well, I mean, we'll maybe get into them later, but I see Steve Peichel being like, "Cool, we were fifth defensively last year in the country. What the hell did that do for us?" So let's get a little bit more dynamic and give ourselves a chance to where if we're playing a team like a 2023 Illinois or like a 2023 Purdue, like we have some semblance of a chance because we can actually try to compete offensively when we play against teams that are so good offensively that it negates our top 10 defense in the country.
All right, we have to mention Minnesota here, right? Like, come on. Elijah Hawkins gone, Cam Christie NBA, Pharrell Payne transfer, Ola Joseph transfer, Braden Carrington even transferred. Man, Isaac, just when you thought Ben Johnson had a foothold or could take off, that's just brutal. Just brutal.
And there were a lot of Dawson Garcia buzz too for the transfer portal. So it could have been worse, as I would say. So the fact that they got him back at a pretty good number, like some of the numbers around him is actually pretty good that they got him back at, does make it a little bit better. But you're right. Like this is a Minnesota team that they're near the bottom of the Big Ten in resources. And until something changes, that's probably going to be like this every way. They kind of remind me a little bit of like Seton Hall, because Seton Hall last year goes on this awesome run in the NIT, probably could have made the NCAA tournament. And then the portal comes and they lose almost everybody that's good because they just can't afford them. So it just stinks too, because Elijah Hawkins did not say he was coming back to Minnesota once. He said it was coming back twice, like multiple times, and still transferred to Texas Tech. So, Minnesota is one of the oldest teams in the league. They've added a lot of fifth-year seniors. It's weird to pick an old team to finish near the bottom, but I just don't know if I see it with this group unless, some things really, really click their way with, a Mike Mitchell breakout, Dawson Garcia is like the player of the year, stuff like that.
I think, and the other thing with Minnesota too, we talk about the lack of funds, right? And it's interesting because I actually really like Ben Johnson. Like I think Ben Johnson's a good coach. I think he cares, which you could say like, sweet, right? You care about your program. But look, like this is like unfortunate to say, but I don't think those funds change or you get an influx of NIL unless Ben Johnson's gone. Because we've seen over the years, right? Like I always say, like, don't tell me about your NIL now. Tell me about your, like, this is for like struggling teams. Don't tell me about it now. Tell me about it when you hire a new coach. Because then all of us donors wake up. There's new, it's like if you're a venture capital firm, right? You're not investing in the tech company that's on its last leg, right? That had to just fire half their workforce, right? You're going to invest in the companies that have growth potential. So that's why, like a lot of those schools, and like I don't know Minnesota's donor base. I don't know, but I know that it's always better when there's like a new excitement around the program, and that either comes in the form of a new coach or like maybe it's finding a way in that Minnesota hotbed that's right there, getting one of those like blue chip recruits that they've missed out on over the years.
All right, let's go on to a big question because I think this might be the hardest question. The Big Ten title favorite is who? We'll start with you, Mike.
Isaac, you can start because I cannot answer this with one team. So Isaac, you start. I'll eventually answer with one team, but I'll just go ahead, Isaac.
I'll stick my neck out there because again, like I said, like I think the gap between number 1 and number 18 in this league is as close as ever. If I have to pick one right now, a month ago it was UCLA, and I'm gonna ride with it again. And I don't love it. That's kind of where I'm at, but that's what I've picked. Like, and here's my pitch for it. Like, yes, there's been a lot of change there, but player development under Mick Cronin is terrific. And I thought Dylan Andrews took a really big step down the stretch last year. He's averaging like 17 and 7 in the last 15 games. Offensively, he is a really, really good player. And defensively, he's even better on the ball. So you have the point guard. And two, what they've done in the portal. Like, this is maybe my favorite class in the portal. And I get, like, you know, you can crush it in the portal and win the portal rankings and still lose, right? We saw that with Villanova this year. We saw that with Arkansas. But what they've added in the portal with a Kobe Johnson, who I think has a chance to be the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, just an elite multi-positional defender. And then, like, let's also not forget how bad it was at UCLA last year, like in that front court. Just this difference of adding a Tyler Bilodeau, who was one of the most efficient players in the Pac-12 last year. Eric Daly, a former top 50 guy who, like, you watch his tape, like, he just explodes off the floor for some tomahawk dunks, like just an outstanding athlete, can really stretch the floor from three as well too. You know, William Kyle is a really interesting player that they've added. Like, they already have a Adai Mara back. So, like, they've added all of these different pieces. And then Trent Perry is, like, one of my favorite freshmen too that they've added. Like, I think if you're looking for the Reed Shepherd, quote unquote, from this next recruiting class, like someone outside the 5-star range who could potentially hear their name called really early in next year's NBA draft, like, I think it's Trent Perry. Shot over 40% from three, 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, really high level processor. So again, like, you're kind of like picking nits with all of these teams near the top of the Big Ten, because, like, there's no perfect team, and I don't think there's a dominant team. But I think UCLA's down season last year really unleashed a fire in Mick Cronin a little bit. And I think this group was going to come back in a fury. And you give him an old team, they usually find a way to exceed expectations.
Yeah, not that he needed that fire, Mick Cronin. But one thing I would mention about this, it feels like Oregon in football feels most ready to make that transition to the Big Ten. Is UCLA that team for you, Isaac? Because this has always kind of been a balanced program under Mick Cronin. The team always finished top 50 in offense and defense.
Yeah, he's a Midwest guy. Like, he has a lot. Like, they played Big Ten basketball on the West Coast. Like, they did. Like, that's just what they do. So also too, like, what they're going to be defensively, like their identity defensively, it doesn't matter if they're in the Big East, the Big 12, the SEC, Big 10, doesn't matter. Like, it works. Like, it 100% works with their ability to really pressure the basketball, really turn you over. And they're going to win, like, the shot attempts game every night, like the shot volume game every night. Like, UCLA wants to, like, basically shoot 56 times per game and you shoot 50 or whatever that number is, right? Like, they're going to always win that game. And I think that plays. And physicality wise, depth wise, point guard wise, guard depth wise, like, UCLA kind of has it. And I really think that I'm talking myself more into this team just because, like, I just have a lot of respect for their player development program and what they scouted in the portal and what they prioritized.
Mike, you got it whittled down a little bit there. So who are you taking? Like, this feels like the most, like, what team do you think most confident that will finish top 4? Because we know it's going to be just a mad dash to the finish here.
Yeah, and quickly on UCLA, like, I think, you know, they were really plagued last year by lack of, like, overall offensive creators. They just were, like, they had to take a lot of tough shots. I mean, their entire backcourt between Andrews and Mack and Stefanovic, like, they all shot under 40% from the field, which is, like, unheard of. That's really hard to do. And that just tells me that you're not able to have enough true creators around to free up space for others. So that, to me, that's the question for UCLA, right? Like, who becomes that guy, and who, maybe it's Dylan Andrews taking a step forward, right? And finding ways to be a little bit more creative off the dribble and not take as many, like, long twos and pull ups like he did last year. But also, as I watched that UCLA team last year, there were some personnel issues, but they played hard. Like, they did play hard. And that's a Mick Cronin team. So I don't think it's like a crazy outlandish pick. It's definitely not my pick, but I could totally see that team just with the people they brought in, and the coaching. Like, I think Mick Cronin is a really good coach. I could see them, like you said, Jeremy, being in that top 4, top 5 of the Big Ten. And if you're in the top 4, top 5, like, you might as well be a favorite or a contender at this point. So, but look, this will start out as a cop-out, but I'll eventually work my way into who I have as my preseason favorite, right? Because I think it all comes down to, like, the lens that you view this in, right? Like, what is your lens for a preseason favorite? Because for each of these teams that I'm about to mention, right, like, if you're of the mindset that a league is yours until it isn't, then the favorite would be Purdue, because you return 3 starters, you have a potential Big Ten Player of the Year at arguably the most important position in the sport. If your preseason favorites, if you view preseason favorites as like, the most ready out of the box, in my opinion, then it's Indiana. Their personnel is more balanced compared to last season. They have 4 guys that I think have all Big Ten type potential. When you think about Rice and Ballo and Mbako and Renew as well. So that talent alone, I think, puts them in the conversation. So if your position on the starting line determines the favorite, right? Like, and what I mean by that is, if you just went, hey, who's the highest floor right now? Like, your preseason favorite is who is ready to go out of the box right now. I think it's Indiana. I really do.
It should be Indiana based on the talent that they have accrued. I think they deserve to be the favorite, but I just have huge questions about the plan. Like,
and that's the point that I'm getting to, right? Because the third part of this is that if your criteria is, hey, you know what? In theory, if everybody hits their ceiling in the conference, let's just play that favorite, then it's Illinois, in my opinion. So, like, those are the 3 that I have. And then because they have, I think, by far the most talented young players in the league by the numbers, right? If you want to go just like actual most talent, it's probably Rutgers in terms of like young talent, with those 2 guys kind of carrying the weight there. But like, if a few of these Illinois guys progress the way that staff envisions them to progress, and then you get like the stability from the older pieces and like the mid-experienced guys like Boswell and White, like that, it could be really scary. But for whatever reason, and this is like my main point that I mentioned all 3 of those, is we don't ever, I mean, we kind of just did with UCLA, but too often we don't bake in coaching to our preseason rankings.
Yep.
And the reason I have a hard time putting Indiana first is, because to this point, and it could change, like Mike Woodson has proven that he does not optimize the talent on his roster like other coaches do.
Even if he should have draft picks, like he has draft picks, but he might not get the most.
And that should matter. Yeah. Like that really, like, to me, that should matter. Because on the flip side, I think Matt Painter does that. I think Brad Underwood does that. Shoot, like Chris Collins does that. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, we've had years where we've been, hey man, what's Wisconsin going to be this year? And like Greg Gard's kind of found a way to piece some things together. So like, although I think Indiana has more talent on paper than a Purdue, I am of the mindset that when you check enough boxes, like, it's Purdue's got to be the preseason favorite. Like that's, in my opinion, they're the preseason favorite. But I say that, do I think they're going to win the league? I think they're going to have a really hard time not having Edey down there. But when you return 3 starters, when you have, like, again, stability at a really important position with Braden Smith, and I really do like the freshmen that they've brought in, right? Like, I think Daniel Jacobson, he's not going to be Zach Edey, but that dude's going to play 20 minutes a game and be a 7'3". Isaac, go ahead. Like, we talked about this a couple of days ago.
I want to bring it up, Isaac. I'm glad Mike's bringing up Purdue, because I know every fan say they don't have Edey, and that's worth how many wins a year. But Painter does this almost all the time, except for that little AJ Hammonds era, right? Like, they have been 12 plus wins every year. Like you can count on it. And I just trust him to get the most out of his team. And he's got some good players coming back. Like Braden Smith's one of the best point guards in the country. I think Trey Kaufman-Ren's going to get better. Fletcher Lawyer, people might not like him, but he makes shots. He's a bucket getter. So I just trust Matt Painter, and he's got good talent coming in.
Well, and also they have an awesome home court advantage, which really plays well in like winning a league, like winning home games. You cannot win the Big Ten without winning your home game. So yeah, the Purdue thing, part of me wonders if, like, I didn't agree with their game plan this offseason to not add anybody from the portal. Now, part of that was just because they didn't have space. Like, they were oversigned by one until Cannon Catchings decommitted and like went to BYU. But that was still a legit decision that they chose to make. Like, they said Mason Gillis, hey, sorry, we don't have room for you. Hey, Ethan Morton, sorry, we don't have room for you. You guys need to hit the portal. Like, that was a choice. And so I felt like Lance Jones was such a big piece for them. Like, finding a Lance Jones like that would have been really nice. But again, like, if you're talking yourself into Purdue, it's Miles Colvin takes a jump, and Cam Heide takes a jump, and Braden Smith makes everybody around him better, like everybody. And he is a really, really cerebral, special player. And you talk to players that play against him, like, they are blown away by him. So that's the thing. The best point guard in the league and the best home court advantage in the league. Like, yeah, I get it.
All right.
I think one more thing sorry. Just
No, go ahead.
like when you look at, again, baked into this criteria here, and I sent Isaac like a blind grouping kind of. I mean, I gave him group A and group B of teams. Like, hey, it was like 6 in one group and 6 teams in another group. And I was like, hey, who would you pick out of these groups to like have the most cumulative wins in the Big Ten this year? And he's like, well, group A, that's easy. Group A was the teams that return 3 or more starters. Group B was the teams that return one or less. So like that group B was like Rutgers, it was Illinois, it was Michigan, it was those types of teams. Because like when you go back through the Big Ten, and when you look at Big Ten champions and who's won it, right? Like Purdue returned 3 starters last year, or 4 actually. They returned 2 the year before. Wisconsin and Illinois, when they shared it back in 21, they each returned 3. Maryland and Michigan State and Wisconsin all shared the league back in 2020. I think it was the COVID season. And Maryland had 4, Michigan State had 3, Wisconsin had 3. And then when in 2019, this is the funniest one, Michigan State had 2. Them and Purdue shared the league. Carson Edwards was the only returner for Purdue that year. Once Vince Edwards and all those guys were gone, he was the sole returning starter on that team. And if you're going to say that one of those one starter teams that are coming back this year are going to win the league, like, do they have a guy like that, like a Carson Edwards, that can really shoulder the load? And I'm not sure, looking at those teams, like, do they have that? No, but like we're also in somewhat of a different era where you can reload a little bit in the portal. So that's always kind of baked in. You can go all the way back to 20. I went back to 2010. Every single one of those teams had either 2, 3, 4. And then there was the one with Carson Edwards. He was the only one that was a sole guy to return as a starter.
And do you know who's on that list too? UCLA. So boom, they qualify.
There you go.
All right, guys, let's turn it negative, as we should. The overrated team coming into the season. Mike, you got to pick the first one here.
Yeah, Ohio State. And again, when we say, I just want to make clarification on this, right? Because when we just say like overrated, you think about like chance in an arena or whatever. Like they're typically for good teams or good players. I think Ohio State's a good team. I'm saying they're overrated relative to, I think, where they're going to be picked preseason for most people. And honestly, like a lot of that has to do with Jake Diebler. And honestly, and that's not even a slight against Jake Diebler. It's just really hard to take over a team like that. And you could look last year and be like, hey, look how well he did in that stretch. It's easy to kind of take that last stretch of games where you're like free of mind and expectations are really, really low and extrapolate it out to what that program can be. But I just think, to be like realistic, it's going to be really hard for, there's going to be ups and downs, not only just for the team, but for Diebler himself, as he kind of learns on the fly, like having his first true full season as a head coach. But look, I think the losses of Okpara and Gale are huge. I thought Gale was the ultimate, like, find a way to bail you out with offensive possessions. I liked what he brought to the table at times.
And I thought that was the whole point of keeping Diebler, was to keep all those guys together.
Well, that's the point, because there's one of two things, right? Either one of two things is the case, most likely. And you could throw NIL in as the third, and I'll say okay. But either Jake Diebler got rid of guys he didn't see a future for, or these guys didn't believe in Jake Diebler. And I think one of those two things is going to play itself out during the season, right? Who's going to be right as this thing goes? Because like, you lose Okpara. Like, I thought when you looked 2 years ago and that team was a top 20 offensive team in the country that was 106 defensively and a 4-16 Big Ten team, which is unheard of as a top 20 offense. Mm-hmm. They started to play Okpara more, and they started to prioritize him more in his second year. And I just thought that totally changed the way they could play, both obviously defensively, but offensively just simplified things. I mean, Zed Key's not a threat as a roller. Now you create more gravity and you pull in more of the defense. You're getting more open shots. But, and him going to Tennessee, like, I think that is just a catastrophic loss. So that's all baked into why I think that they're overrated. But my last point on Ohio State is that whole Chris Holtmann era, they weren't over one time. They were over 250th in the country in tempo. They got to play faster. Like they just have to. You add Michi Johnson, who hasn't shot over 40% from the field in his career, playing for a South Carolina team last year that just would literally hold the ball for 20 to 25 seconds of the possession and then go and either throw it into the post and try to get a shot up. Like you have to go find easier ones by playing faster and trying to exploit matchups. And if they don't do that, I think it's going to be an underwhelming year for them. I like the pickups, Parrish, Bradshaw. Like we can get into that, but that's why they're at the top of the list of my overrated teams.
And Isaac, before you go, I think the thing that's always going to happen is he's going to be compared to coaches they could have gotten, and that's going to be a tough spot, especially if you do struggle a little early on. Because Mike, as you talked about, like that was a big time job. So Isaac, if you got anything on Ohio State, or you can get into your overrated team.
Yeah, I already did it. Like I've already compared him to Sean Miller in the recruiting or the transfer portal class that Miller put together at Xavier versus what Diebler put together at Ohio State. One little note I would add with Ohio State, their wings might be the worst in the Big Ten. I have real questions about Micah Parrish as like a anything other than a spot up guy who will rebound just a little bit. And then Evan Mahaffey really kind of was a disappearing act a lot of times last year. It's like, well, what are you doing? What are you bringing to the team here? We can say connector and just like really connects the dots, knows how to be a role player, but sometimes it was a lot of cardio too. So that's kind of the concerns I think I'd have with them. And another thing too is how much shooting can they get? Michi Johnson had his best year last year at South Carolina because they inverted the floor with BJ Mack, who was a stretch the floor big man. And I think Aaron Bradshaw, the idea of him as a stretch the floor big man is good, but we haven't necessarily seen that yet. And then Sean Stewart and Devin Royal, both of those guys are really talented, but they haven't really proven to stretch the floor yet. So Ohio State's fair. Do you want me to move on to my overrated team though?
Go ahead.
Mine's Rutgers, not because
Don't hate it.
Yeah, like so. Do we understand like the injury things that's already popping up this summer? Dylan Harper's out 4 to 6 weeks with a knee injury right now and missing a bunch of summertime. Like that's a concern. Tyson Acuff, who they brought in from Eastern Michigan to be like their 6th man of the year, like go score off the bench. Like he's out 3 months with a foot injury. So like those are 2 enormous pieces that are missing a decent chunk of summer workouts. And I love Harper. I think Harper has a chance to be a first team All Big Ten guy. Like he's going to be a lottery pick one day, but there's some concerns on this roster. Like, does anyone know who their starting center is? Like Emmanuel Ogbole, like that. No one knows who that is. Have you looked at their fours? Like they have some guys like Zach Martini out of Princeton. Like he can make shots. He's not going to guard anybody. Like he's a little bit slow footed to guard 4s. And I'm not sure he's big enough to even like switch on to 5s. Like, I don't know who he guards. They've added a PJ Hayes out of San Diego. Like he's a good shooter, but again, major questions about them defensively. And Ace Bailey, super talented, but he takes a lot of tough shots. And the Big Ten is well scouted, as Mike knows, and played in that league. Like it's super, super well scouted. These teams are going to be really prepared for everything that Ace does. So I don't know, like if I really think like these 2 freshmen have to be like super, super special, because I think there's going to be people out there that literally think that they can go to the Final Four or like make the Sweet 16 or potentially win the league. And I'm just not there. Like I think they're maybe closer to 8th or 9th in the Big Ten.
Yeah, they got to be 2 top 5 picks, Mike, right? For them to do that. And they're freshmen. Like they still are freshmen, even if they are otherworldly freshmen. And what is around them is Isaac Jeremiah Williams, 3rd best player on that team.
Has to be.
I mean, look, I think these other guys have to be good to really accentuate definitely the skill set of Ace Bailey, but for sure with Dylan Harper too. When you talk about the ability to get to the rim and finish around, like Dylan Harper's really good finishing around the rim, finishing through traffic. But I also can see Dylan Harper falling into what he's fallen into in high school, which is like, I'm going to shoot a ton of 3s off the bounce and just not be efficient doing it. Right. Like that's going to really anchor, I think, his production from the outside. And we talked about like what the expectations are for Rutgers and, people picking them as a dark horse Final Four. Okay, let's get to the tournament. Right. Like let's find a way to get back to the tournament, because I think Steve Peichel, it felt like they were trending in the right direction, 3-4 years ago with that kind of Harper, Mulcahy, McConnell, Amori, like that group. And I just think they took a major step back last year. and we'll see. Like I think they will prioritize probably playing a little bit faster, even though their tempo actually wasn't bad offensively last year. But Derek Hack is another one from Merrimack that I don't mind the addition of him, because Merrimack played a ton of zone. Rutgers isn't necessarily going to play zone per se, but they'll play that token 2-2-1 press where he can kind of rove and be a center fielder and try to intercept some passes like he did last year for Merrimack. There's just a lot, like you said, Isaac, like there's just a lot of question marks at a lot of, I think, important positions beyond just, hey, we have 2 potential top 5 picks. Because we've seen in the past, like Ben Simmons' team for LSU was horrible. Gigi Jackson, Gigi Jackson, when it was like, hey, I'm going to go play for the South Carolina team. And it was like, man, this is really hard to get off shots when I got no one around me that can create. So like, this isn't just like set it and forget it, 2 top 5 picks. Man, this team's going to be a contender for the league. I certainly don't have them as a contender for the league. I think I have them. I don't know my latest power rankings that are in my notes app. I think they're 8th or 9th. They're right there somewhere. But my last point around just freshmen in general, I think we're entering a phase, and it's a little bit, I think similar to like pre-COVID, really just pre-COVID years, right? Where freshmen had more of an impact on winning games. We think about those like Michigan teams with like when Stauskas was there and Levert. I get they had Trey Burke, but like there were a lot of good freshmen on that team. Like that 2015 Final Four, right? There were 17 true freshmen that started for Sweet 16 teams. There were 4 last year in college basketball. And now I think that we're moving out of this phase of like 23, 24-year-olds, like 50 or 60-year guys. I think there's more of an impact that those freshmen can have. But shoot, man, if you don't have anything around those guys, it's going to make it all the more difficult for Harper and Bailey.
Yeah, and that's what makes Illinois really interesting. And why if Dylan Harper's healthy, I'll probably have him as the Big Ten Freshman of the Year favorite. But Kasparis could be a really interesting one because of the talent that is around him. All right, let's move on to the next topic. Sneaky contender. Like if you guys want to do this for like sneaky top 5 team or sneaky NCAA tournament team, whatever you want to go with this one, but just a team that you think maybe could be a little frisky, I guess is what I'm saying.
This one was super easy for me. It's Oregon. Like, I think they're a sneaky contender to win the league. Like, they're really good, like really, really good. We've talked a lot about freshmen and like their lack of impact. I went back and looked at like the portal stuff. 48 of the top 61 freshmen from the class of 2023 are coming back to college basketball next year. 25 of that 48 transferred. So like there's been a lot of guys leaving. The only team that was able to get their freshmen back was Oregon. They get Jackson Shellstad back, they get KJ Evans back, and they get Mookie Cook back. And that was one of their best classes that they've had under Dana Altman. So they get all 3 of those guys back. Now, losing N'Faly Dante, I think, is going to take the smoke off of this team a little bit. Like, they're going to be like a little bit underrated, I think, just because like Dante back would have really made them kind of like mainstream to like this group. But this team is going to be really, really good because what they did in the portal. TJ Bamba out of Villanova is awesome, like an awesome role player. Brandon Angel out of Stanford is a terrific role player, like shot like over 70% of the rim and shot like I think 40% on his catch and shoot threes. And if there's a real history here of guys who leave Stanford under Jared Haas, who was not very good at his job, transferring out of Stanford has been a really good thing for a lot of guys. Cormac Ryan was a guy who really exceeded expectations after he left Stanford. I think we're going to see it with Andrej Stojakovic at Cal. And then we saw it last year with Harrison Ingram transferring into North Carolina too. So there's a lot of examples of this. So I think that Oregon has done, terrific work in the portal, terrific work from a roster retention standpoint. And Jackson Shellstad, get ready to know the name. Like Big Ten fans who didn't necessarily watch him last year, like you're going to love this dude. He's 6 foot. He's a sophomore. He is a bucket getter. Like if you think of like Carson Edwards, if you like that version of a guard who's going to go score, like Jackson is that type of guy. And again, for a 6 foot guard, shot 63% at the rim last year. Really good off the bounce, really good from 3 too. Like a lot of guards like want to be 3-level scorers. Like Jackson actually is one. And he had to take a back seat at times because Cuisinart down the stretch started to become like the alpha, and Dante was kind of getting his stuff. But I think Shellstad's a really, really terrific player, really underrated, first team All Big Ten type of guy too. So that's my Oregon pitch.
I'm looking forward to the Braden Smith, Jackson Shellstad matchup. Like that's going to be an awesome matchup. I think like there's no question that he has no question has all league potential. I think the question is what team, right? And I think he can be like, if he takes a step this year, he can be in the second team conversation. I think there's no question about that. But the question, right, is like, can he uplift guys around him? Because I think you talked about TJ Bamba, right? Like, I think good as a catch and shoot guy. I think he was 40% this past year, catch and shoot. Good as a straight line drive guy. I think when he starts playing with the ball is where things start to go awry for him. But you mentioned Brandon Angel, man. Like, he's legitimately like maybe one of my favorite players in the portal. Like, this is one of my favorite pickups of the offseason, because when you watch him, it's like, inside out, broad shoulders, can spin off of you, and then like catch and shoot in rhythm on a fast break, pick and pop. Like, he can do so much. Like, he is the quintessential pick and pop four, and has some game too. Like, he can deck you. He can catch it at the elbow and face up and go to work. Like, I really like Oregon. I have them 4th right now. But it would not shock me at all to see them win this league. Like, it really wouldn't. I think they're that good. So I think you're spot on with your Oregon take there. I'm gonna say sneaky contender. And look, I don't think they're gonna win the league, this team I'm about to mention. I don't. But no one is talking about them. And I'm pounding my fist on the table. I want to talk about the Northwestern Wildcats.
Bardo was talking about Northwestern.
I do. I want to talk about them, because I think when you look at it, you're like, man, boo-booey, man, that is a massive loss. It's like the ability to bail them out situations, getting downhill, finishing in the intermediate. He shot it incredibly well from 3 last year. Like, he was the ultimate, like, F it, boo-booey's down there somewhere type guy. But then it's like, when you zoom out and you look at all the question marks around the league, man, it's like they still have Brooks Barnhizer. They still have Ty Berry. They still have Matthew Nicholson, who I think, like, when you look at like 5 men in the league who just like, hey man, I just want to screen and rebound. Like, he's up there in terms of like a DYJ, Bill Belichick, do your job type of guy. Now, can he stay healthy? Because I think his issues being in and out of the lineup last year, I think, plagued Northwestern down the stretch. But and then Martinelli, I think, has a chance. Yeah, like that game at Maryland last year, you're like, okay, like there's something there where he has the ability to be a guy that can score 20 plus on a given night. And then Jalen Leach, look at Fairfield, and he's gonna be the guy. Like, I don't even want to say boo-booey replacement, because that feels sacrilegious. Like, that is ridiculous. But the one thing I will say, when you watch Jalen Leach, is one of boo-booey's best attributes was like, he just had this fearlessness to him, and Jalen Leach like has that. And you can call it fearlessness, you can call it like irrational confidence. They need, like, Northwestern needs a guy like that. They do. Like, they need it. Like, I'm not sure that's Ty Berry's more of a play off you type of guy. Brooks Barnhizer, although he can create a little bit, like, he still needs another guy that can go. And I do think that Jalen Leach can go. Like, watching him last year for Fairfield, he really good free throw shooter too, just like Boo Booey was. He has the ability to create off the bounce. He can get downhill. Like, I like this Northwestern team as a, hey, they're not going to be the 15th place team in this conference.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I think I have them like 9th or 10th right now. But I think that's sneaky compared to maybe where people would put them.
I agree with that. I got another team that I think that same way about that we'll get into, but they are old. So that's a good thing, and they have some proven players. It's just, yes, that Isaac, they need that half court break it down guy. So Jalen Leach, there's a lot of pressure on him to be that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I play pickup like 3 times a week, and I have a superstar point guard that I love playing with. And when he's not there, like, all of those great looks that I got, like, aren't that easy. Like, it's just not. And so, like, I just feel like sometimes, like with Northwestern, I think they might have to play these 5 starters with their big man that they just got, Keenan Fitzmaurice. I think they'll play him with Nicholson, like, as maybe a platoon. But the other 4, they might not have to come off the floor, because all of their bench guys are super young and super unproven. Like, I've heard the KJ Wyndham hype. I've heard like the Angelo Ciaravino, whatever hype. Like, I don't know how ready those guys are for Big Ten basketball right away. So they're going to be really thin. Like, Northwestern is a frisky team if they're fully healthy for all 35 games this year. If they have one injury to their core four, I'm really concerned. Really concerned.
Well, yes. I think too, like look in the NCAA tournament last year, and even like down the stretch in some like pretty important games, and it's like walk-on Blake Smith is in the game, right? Like, so I at least think like if you can get anything from one of those freshmen, anything, it's better than I think your depth last year in certain spots, right? Like you had Unger, you had Preston. And like, I just think if you can take that next step with your depth, which I'm not counting on, like Collins is going to have to be Chris Thibodeau. Like he's just going to have to be, he's going to have to be Tibbs this year and ride those guys just like he did. I mean, it's not any different than what he did with Brooks Barnhizer, right? Like Barnhizer, I think played 36 minutes a game last year. Boo Booey was 37. Audige the year before was playing like 40 minutes a game. Like he's used to doing this, so it's just a matter of what you get out of those guys in those minutes.
And I'll give this because it's not the same as Painter, but I give Chris Collins kind of the benefit of the doubt. Like I just kind of give him like that.
They'll
team,
play hard.
Yeah, like it'd be surprised me if they didn't get to like 8 to 12 wins or 8 to 10 wins or whatever it would be. All right, let's go. This is kind of a similar category, but just more. Hey, this bottom half team probably not going to contend, but they're going to be fun to watch. So what's the bottom half Big Ten team you'll enjoy watching most? I'll go with you, Mike.
USC. I'm putting them in my bottom half because like there's a lot of individual pieces I like on this team. I'm just fascinated to see who emerges from this bunch, right? You have this like smorgasbord of transfers. Like I think Agbo, I think Claude, I think St. Thomas, like those three feel pretty secure. Now, if you want to throw Terrence Williams in there and say 4,
Juwan Howard,
like, so I'd say those 3, I think I feel pretty secure about. The other 8 or 9 are like basically 15 point per game mid-major guys that I'm assuming came to USC to play, and some of them are not. So that I say entertaining in a sense, like I want to see how this all shakes out for USC, and Muss has been an agent of chaos over the years, but he's also had pros over the years, and he doesn't really have that. I mean, whatever you want to say Desmond Claude's NBA future is, you can obviously call him an NBA prospect, but outside of that, like there really aren't like a ton of guys that I see on this team that are like, man, this is like the prototypical Muss, like, hey, find a way with these 4 young NBA first round picks. And see where you end up at the end of the season. So I'm curious to see how he manages that. That's why it's entertaining to me.
That was a good reminder to everyone listening. Like Eric Musselman's in the Big Ten at USC. So that is entertaining.
USC's in the Big Ten as well.
Isaac, who you got here?
So I don't think this team's actually very good, and I honestly have thought about picking them last, but I'm really fascinated by like what this Penn State new look backcourt looks like, because they have a lot of people back, but Freddie DeLeon that they got out of Tennessee is a really interesting talent grab for him. Again, he's a kid who's literally only spent like 3 semesters in college. He reclassed. He came to Tennessee a little bit early, but I mean, I'm comfortable sharing this. Like he made more than Dalton Knecht last year at Tennessee. Like they have a lot of high expectations for him. Like, and they thought that he was going to be a really good player for him. And Mike Rhodes gets him to Penn State. And so like Penn State like has like this old guy with Ace Baldwin who we've already known what that looks like. And then this young cat coming up in Freddie DeLeon. And it's hard for me not to make like the Hunter Salas comps, because Hunter Salas gets buried at Gonzaga. 2 years there don't go really well. Like a lot of expectations for him, goes to Wake Forest and finally shines as one of the better players in the league. And I kind of wonder if DeLeon has a chance to replicate that in some ways. And I think Ace is going to be really good for him from a leadership perspective, just carrying the load, especially as well too. And they're also like just a dichotomy of like Ace feeling like, I mean, what do they list him at 6'1"? Like he's definitely not 6'1". He's probably 5'10". With Freddie, who's like this 6'5" with a super long wingspan type of guard. Like it's going to be really fun to see those two together. And if they're good, Penn State might be a frisky team again, because I'm stunned all the time when I look back at the standings from last year. Like Penn State was 9-11 in Big Ten play. Like I did not remember that, and they were.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of a frisky team. The other team I want to throw out there, I'm wondering to get your thoughts because they didn't crush it in the portal, kind of missed on some of the targets they wanted to. But boy, they got a big NBA draft decision back. Peyton Sandford going back to Iowa. Owen Freeman, I did not see this as a freshman. I know part of it was opportunity, but he played well. He showed me toughness and some Brock Harding's undersized, but they got Thelwell coming in there. Josh Dix was fantastic for them down the stretch. So any Iowa thoughts, guys? Because they're going to score points.
Yeah, they're actually my sneaky contender category. And
that's what I'm thinking too, yeah.
Like I had them as like one of the other teams. Familiar faces coming back. And I think you know how I feel about familiar faces, right? We love familiar faces because it's like, hey, they're back, but it's like, hey, these guys are back and they were what last year in the conference, right? So, but I do like the pieces they added around those guys, around that core that came back. I think they got a little more dynamic. I think they got a little more athletic. Like I really like Traore from Manhattan. Like he's just got great size. He's 6'7". He can put the ball on the floor. He's almost like I don't want to call him like a point forward because he's just kind of like a true wing that is able to operate in ball screens at times. And then Tajo as well. Like they got a freshman coming in who's just an absolute freak. Really, really good player. But they definitely add some strength and athleticism to their lineup. And look, Sanford. But I think Dix and Freeman, those are two guys that are, I think, just prime for leaps. I mean, Dix was almost like a 50, 40, 90 guy last year. And Dix has to walk into every single game and be like, I'm getting 10 shots up tonight. I don't care. Like that dude is too talented and skilled to go through games with like 5 field goal attempts. Like he's got to be ultra aggressive this year. And then the other thing, I mean, I talk about Owen Freeman. Like I think Owen Freeman is like, he's a guy that I don't want to say like has, is like a dark horse all Big Ten guy, but he's going to have that type of impact defensively. He's an all defensive team type guy. But the last thing that I'm really curious to see with Iowa is like, does Fran lean more into the loyalty to a Brock Harding, or does he like let Drew Thelwell go? Because I think Thelwell did such a good job at Morehead State. They ran a ton of actions at Morehead State, but he was the ultimate set the table guy. And I think if you can get Dix and you can get Sandford in different spots, like whether coming off floppy screens on the baseline, pin downs, like Thelwell's the perfect guy to set that table. So I'm curious to see how they kind of work out that backcourt rotation. I really like the pieces that they have and the familiarity, although it's, not from a team that was
right.
Final Four team last year, but there's at least some real talent on that team. And I think we expect some jumps from those other guys.
That team that went 10-10 and barely missing the NCAA tournament. Go ahead, Isaac.
The simplistic way I've also viewed Iowa is Sanford's awesome from 3, Dix is awesome from mid-range, and Owen Freeman's awesome at the rim. So it's like you kind of have like 3 different areas of the floor that you can kind of get something from. Underrated part, little nuggets I'm thinking about as I've done all this research. Thelwell, 38% on his catch and shoot threes. Kind of got my attention. That's over a 2-year sample size, back-to-back years of doing that. So I think I buy him as a shot maker a little bit more than I initially thought. It's his percentages aren't going to necessarily jump off the page at you, but he's a good shooter. Traore, phenomenal athlete. They love these freshmen coming in too. So here's the other thing too. Everyone in Iowa right now is talking about how they're going to play defense this year. I'm completely out on that. I don't see it, especially when they have Brock Harding at the 1, because I don't trust him as a small, undersized guard. I think any smart team, booty ball team, is going to go right after him. Peyton Sandford hasn't been a high-level defender yet. Josh Dix, I saw a TikTok video. His arms are the size of my wrists. He's small. Like, he's a small guy. I don't buy it defensively. And Freeman, like you talked about him defensively, I didn't like his tape as much last year defensively. I felt like he was really out of position a lot. He's lunging. He's trying to make
freshman.
Yeah, that's probably right. And so like he left me wanting a lot more on that end, even though the shot blocking was just a big shot in the arm for what their roster construction was. So Traore is going to have to douse a ton of fires for them defensively if they want to, be a competent defensive team. So I'm selling that, but buying Iowa, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. All right, guys. Best player in the Big Ten. This feels so wide open. It hasn't been wide open in a while. So, we had Garza and Io, and then you get the Zach Edey era. So who you got here, Isaac?
Yeah, I thought about this for like an hour and I kept going back to Braden Smith. Like I just, it's hard for me to put anybody above him. And, I think there's still some holes in his game. He shot just 48% at the rim on a low volume. Like he's not a 3-level scorer yet. Like he really isn't. But like the playmaking, the ability to get a jumper off from his mid-range against length and athleticism, he is a killer in late clock situations, as Illinois fans can remember pretty well from that game in Champaign. I don't think that he was a byproduct of just Edey. I don't. Like, I think that the processing and his ability to see the floor and his ability to understand space and the court mapping and ability to draw a second defender and multiple offhand reads that he does with his playmaking, like that stuff isn't just because he has Zach Edey on the floor with him. So I think that he's the best player in the Big Ten, although there are some really good contenders.
Mike, I was going to ask, like, is there a recent comp? Because it feels like Braden does get this like system quarterback kind of thing when it's like, man, sometimes he reminds me of Cassius Winston. Sometimes he reminds me of like even an Anthony Cowan or something like that. Like to me, he's a legit stud point guard.
Tyus Jones.
There you go.
Go watch Tyus Jones highlights from Duke, and you're like, Jesus, that's Braden Smith.
Mike's been on this run for like 10 months, I would say.
Yeah. I was like floored. Truly, go watch Tyus Jones highlights from Duke. There's like one YouTube video at the top, right when you search his name, and he's got the arm sleeve. He's like thin. There's like not a ton of lift on the jump shot, but it goes like there's a lot of things that a lot of parallels there between those two guys. And look, like it's Braden Smith for me too.
Yeah.
And he's at the most important position, in the sport, really. I thought he took a major step forward last year, taking care of the ball compared to how horrible that year ended 2 years ago, especially in the tournament against Fairleigh Dickinson. Now he needs to prove that he can do that again without, one of the greatest guardrails in college basketball history in Zach Edey. But, I think Daniel Jacobson won't have 1/10 of the, effect that Zach Edey had, but to have a 7'3" guy out there again, that although thinner than Zach Edey can set screens, like where Braden Smith hurts you the most in screening, like you talked about the court mapping, Isaac, like his ability to snake screens and keep you, but like he's not a big, we talk about Jaden Ivey and these guys that are, so good at Damas did it, like keeping you on their hip. Mm-hmm. Like he's not even a big guy and he still finds a way to keep you on your hip or keep you on his hip. And why that's so important and why he's able to create so many easy looks is because when you're able to do that and you can't have your guys squaring you back up, when all these teams play drop coverage in the Big Ten, you are forcing that big man to have to commit to you. Now you got either a lob at the rim, or if there's a tag on the weak side, you got, a shake action, a throwback to Fletcher Lawyer or to any of these guards that are capable, Cam Heide guys that are able to make shots. So I think, and this is why I think I'll make my final point here on why I think he wins Big Ten Player of the Year. It's the usage. And when you look at, like, I think he can have like an 18-8 type of season this year. And who does that compare to? It's 18-19 Cassius Winston. Mm-hmm. Because Cassius, his usage skyrocketed after those first 2 seasons at Michigan State. And that was because Miles Bridges and Nick Ward left. And if you want to like bunch Bridges and Ward into like an aggregate to compare to Edey, probably still doesn't have the same effect. But like he went from that 20 to 21% usage rate, Cassius Winston did, to 28-29 in 1 year. And I think Braden Smith is about to do the same thing because he was 20% last year, and I could totally see that increasing. Now we'll see the way Matt Painter draws stuff up. Like it's not just going to be high ball screen every single time. So we'll see. But I think he's absolutely going to have an uptick in usage.
And one other thing too with him, he is a psychopath in the best way. Like he wasn't a good mid-range jump shooter as a freshman, and he worked with his dad like tirelessly all offseason to become a really knockdown mid-range guy where he was coming off that screen and firing that thing. Like that's what he was going to do. So like all of the little nits we can pick with his game of like not being able to finish at the rim or like defensively, like can you switch on to bigger guards? Like how can you be more of a pest on that end of the floor? All of these things. Like I think he's working on that like tirelessly this offseason. So like the jump that he made from year 1 to year 2 makes me think that the jump from year 2 to year 3, maybe it doesn't show up necessarily on the numbers, but I think it will, is going to be really, really special.
Yeah.
All right. Did you guys give me 2 quick names that you also consider for this, if you considered anybody else?
Go ahead, Isaac.
Well, Dylan Harper was the first one I thought of for this one, and then I think Miles Rice would be the other one I was thinking about too, just because I think Miles Rice is a really, really good player and is going to get better too.
Dylan Harper was my only other name. Like it's really hard to fathom that, one of those two guys. Actually, it's really hard to fathom that Braden Smith doesn't win it, to be honest. Maybe it's not as runaway as an Edie or some of these guys that Garza, like you mentioned, Jeremy, like these different guys that have ran through the league. But I'm wondering, right, like who's going to have the usage, who's going to win, like all that I think is baked in when you try to determine those things. And that rules out, I think, a lot of guys in the conference, including maybe Dylan Harper.
That's right. This is maybe my favorite topic because you guys can take it anywhere. And I'll give you some time to just give any nuggets that you want that you've researched. So, but hottest take. What is your absolute hottest take about the Big Ten? Mine probably has something to do with Nebraska being like just as good as last year. I don't know. Rink Mass being out kind of ruined that take for me though. So Isaac Trotter, you go first. Hottest take.
I think there's going to be a team that gets a first place vote in the media poll that misses the NCAA tournament. That's my hot take.
That's good.
I think that there's like, if you could, I think, no offense to some media members, but they're going to look at Bart Torvik and they're going to see Michigan State third. And they're going to be like, oh, well, Michigan State. Like, I think
I was going to say, just come out and say it. That's the team that immediately came to mind for me.
But that's where I'm at. I think there's going to be a team that, like, you could make a case for 5 or 6 teams to be number one. Someone's going to do it. And
Can you imagine if it's Indiana?
Oh my God.
It can't be Indiana. Like it can't. And like the broader point that I'll make is that I'm not like the biggest Ballo fan. I'm not. But we've seen over the years, whether it's, and I'm not putting him on the same level as these guys, but Edie, Coburn, Dickinson, like when you have a 5 like that,
Luka,
who commands some sort of attention, like you're going to win 10 plus, 11 plus games. You just are. Like you're going to have such an advantage every single night. And that's why like those Kofi, all these guys were such good guardrails because there was just a certain way you had to play against them. So that's why I just don't. And with the talent they have, like Mike, if it goes, Mike Woodson will be out before the season ends if they're trending towards missing the tournament. There's no question about that.
Yeah. All right, that's a great one, Isaac. Mike, what do you got?
I don't want to like completely rain on your Nebraska parade. They were my next team for worst offseason, and it has nothing to do with Fred Hoiberg or anything. Like, it's just the loss of Rink Mass makes it like the worst offseason because I just look at that team and I have them 15th right now, and maybe that's just like me like trying to prove a point.
Well, they lost to legend Keisei Tominaga too, so.
Well, and CJ Wiltshire is another guy that I thought was like a massive bailout, like go get you a bucket type of guy at times. And Tominaga, of course, but Rink Mass was the connective tissue of that offense. He just was. And then now, like, you get Braxton Mail, like some of their front court. Isaac, you and I were talking about this the other day. Like, their front court is not good.
No,
like it just isn't. And then when you look, you're like, man, neither is their backcourt. So then it's like, now what? Because Juwan Gary and Bryce Williams, as much as I would have them on my team any day of the week. Like Juwan Gary, ultimate junkyard dog, like so good at the little things. Bryce Williams, I think, go read Isaac's article from a few months ago. These guys that can have these like year 2 transfer bumps. Like, I agree with you. I think he can be a candidate for that, but there's a definite ceiling for what his like creating ability is on the ball, and they're just going to need that from somebody this year. And I don't know where that comes from.
Isaac, what do you think of a Sejan transfer in there and Gavin Griffiths, 2 Big Ten guys going? I'm kind of buying into the Fred Hoiberg glow up. It's just, yes, the Rink Mass injury just ruined this for me.
Well, Sejan and Griffiths are going to be really, really important, like on the development of Berke Bayungtensau, because you have to be Nebraska. Like, you have to have a 5 that can pass the ball. And Berke, like in FIBA, when I was watching his stuff from a couple years ago, like it was there as a playmaker, and they need him to be that guy. And if he is that guy where like they can invert the floor with him and they can run all of the stuff that Mass did, where he's like dropping off those backdoor dimes and the dribble handoffs and all the pick and pop stuff. If Berke can do that, I like Offseason way more, and I like Griffiths way more because you can get like a lot more creative with what they can do. Now, if they have to change and they have to play Mia at the 5 or they have to play Andrew Morgan at the 5, like I feel like that changes the game there. And some of those like creator questions that Mike's had that I think are fair, we have some, I think that they get exacerbated a little bit more because both of those guys, like they need someone else to get them in their spots. They're like me playing pickup. Like I said, like they need someone to get them in their spots for them to be successful. And so I think Offseason's a really good offensive player. I think Gavin Griffiths can be a really good offensive player, but like the development of Berke is going to be the thing that really unlocks them. And if they can reach their ceiling.
All right, guys, wrapping up. I know you got more in your notebook. So what do you want to get out? You got to get it out.
I'll give you my actual hot take.
Okay.
I just wanted to talk about Nebraska for a second, but my actual hot take, and it's not a hot take if it's not at least somewhat outlandish. And I don't think it's like outlandish, but I think the Big Ten has and I don't want to say the most teams. I'm taking it a step further. I think they will have the highest percentage of NCAA tournament teams out of the Power 4 conferences. I think the middle of the Big Ten is getting completely overlooked. And again, this is a lot of it's going to be predicated on non-conference. Indiana certainly, I want to say didn't do themselves any favors with their scheduling. They better beat the crap out of most of those teams that they play. But I don't know. Like I just look and I'm not really sold on the ACC. Like even the teams that they added, right? They added Cal and Stanford. And I don't know. The Big 12, you have some bad teams at the bottom of the Big 12. And then for the Big East, it's like they had 3 NCAA tournament teams last year.
So, Mike, you're saying basically like you think 12 of the 18 Big Ten teams make the tournament. So
I was going to set it like 10.
That's my hot take. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was going to set it at 10.5. It'll be interesting, like a 9-11 team in the Big Ten. Like obviously you got to do a little bit better in the non-conference, but like they should be under consideration in this league.
Yeah. When we went to the NCAA tournament my freshman year, I think we were 8-10 in league. Like that league was insane my freshman year. So I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to happen. That's just my hot take.
That's a good one. I think the SEC is going to give them a run for their money there because a lot of those teams in that league got insane amount of money. Like I think now transfer portal rankings are like whatever. Like I understand they're dumb, but I think the SEC got a third of the top 60 players in the portal. Like that's a pretty bonkers number there. So there's a lot of really good rosters there, but 2/3 of the league in the tournament isn't nuts.
All right,
well, I'm trying to think, right? Like when you look at the SEC, right? Like Arkansas is going to be better for sure, right? Like they're 6-12 in conference last year. They're definitely going to be better. Missouri has to be better because they were 0-18, but you got Missouri, Vanderbilt, Georgia. Like, is the bottom of that league going to be better outside of Arkansas?
Yeah, here's what I would say. I think
is LSU going to be better?
No. LSU and Vanderbilt are trash. Like, I don't think those two teams are very good compared to what the other rosters are in the SEC. But every other one, like Georgia, this is the best roster that Georgia basketball has had in a long time. Like Ole Miss, this is the best basketball roster that Ole Miss has had in a long time as a program. So I know this is a Big Ten pod, but like that's kind of where we're at with SEC. Can I empty off my notebook on takes that just irritated Mike from our texts? All right, ready? Roddy Gale is a first-team All-Big Ten guy is something that I've thought about, and Mike says maybe he should be an All-Big Ten like honorable mention first before we have that conversation.
Yeah, I'll say I like Roddy Gale. I do.
I love Roddy Gale.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like there. I think it's what's interesting is when you talk about like All Big Ten, right? Like first team All Big Ten and stuff. It's like you think about that player being anointed that and receiving that accolade, and you don't like. I think when you sent that, it was like knee jerk, was like no way, and then when you zoom out, you're like, well, one, like someone's got to get first team All Big Ten, right? Like I think the guy that's making $2 million this year for Washington is going to be on the first or second team. Great Osibor. Like I think it's going to be difficult for him to be on one of those two teams. I don't think Washington's going to win. And I don't think that like I don't like his production. He'll find a way because it's still Danny Sprinkle. Like he came over with like they're gonna run things through him like they did last year. So he's gonna have the opportunity. I just don't see them winning enough games, and I don't see him being obviously as effective as he was at Utah State. So I know I just took that and I crossed over. I deflected almost.
Yeah, I like hearing a little bit about Washington. Totally forgot about that program.
We haven't even mentioned Maryland either.
Well,
do you have any Maryland takes, Isaac?
That was another one that I was looking at. Maryland, I think, has how do I say this kindly? Like, are we sure Kevin Willard's a really good coach? Like, I mean, I don't understand the roster construction this year at all. Again, I think I'm not convinced that Maryland is very good at the whole portal thing. Like, I don't understand adding Rodney Rice and Jalen Young to this mix for like both of those guards. Like, you need to add shooting, and both those guards have really major questions about their shooting. Sultan Miguel, like, you bringing him in, I understand it. He shot it well last year, but he's really more of a point than he is an off-ball guy. Gillespie out of Belmont, Jacoby Gillespie, amazing efficiency at like every level, like unbelievable efficiency.
Crazy.
Yeah, but it's almost like a red flag where it's like, I don't know if this is going to work at the Big Ten.
No, I mean, Missouri Valley definitely played a part in that. I mean, this dude's like, looks like he's 160 pounds soaking wet. He shot 67% from 2 last year. Like, and that's not even like, hey, he was, whatever it would be 14 for 21. Like he was like, it was crazy. I mean, he was like 70. What was he around the rim? Like 74%. I mean, it was like outrageous numbers that like, and they played fast last year. Like he got out and I wonder if that's what their thought process is this year is like, hey, we're going to like try to play faster. I just don't know if you're starting Queen and Reese, if you can really do that.
Yeah. Right. And Deshaun Harris-Smith, more shooting questions there. Miguel shooting questions there. Like, it's just like, I don't know. Then they went to the portal and got all right. Like, it's just like, I don't understand like what the game plan is here. Like, we know what modern basketball wins in modern basketball. It feels like Maryland is like, I'm not doing it that way. Like, we're going to do it my way, and we're going to win with like toughness and grit and rebounding and all of that stuff. And I'm just not sure that's going to work.
Sounds familiar. Sounds like Indiana a little bit.
Kind of does.
It's a big year for him though, isn't it? Like, I know it was year 3 for him. Like, but this feels like where's this going kind of year for him.
Yeah, but it's going to get loud there. Like that area, that DMV area, right? Like, Maryland has I'd say a pretty solid tradition.
Oh yeah,
with basketball. I mean, say what you want about Mark Turgeon. Like they had some pretty unbelievable years in the Big Ten. Under Mark Turgeon, like pros. And I wonder if like they're trying to recapture. I know Turgeon's gone, but it's like this feels like who am I thinking of? Robert. Who was the big for Maryland? It was obviously Diamond Stone, and I want to say Robert Williams or Robert Smith, but it's not. It's neither. It's Robert something.
Jalen Smith was there, right?
No, it wasn't Jalen Smith. It was we'll go back and find it, but they essentially played 2 bigs, back then too, and then they had Jake Layman on the wing. They had Melo Trimble. Like, they just had more talent. Like this team, I just don't see like Jameer Young might have like scoliosis from carrying that team over the past few years. I mean, seriously, like I don't know what the heck they would have been without him.
Robert Carter.
God, Carter Smith. I mean, it's all. Yeah, I mean, like those teams are so. I mean, Des Wells, like they had those teams were head and shoulders above what Maryland looks like now. And I had heard behind the scenes a little bit that like Willard, when it comes to NIL, it's like I don't get into bidding wars and I don't, it's like, well, cool. Well, you're not going to get talent.
Yeah.
And it's almost feels like Michigan State in a way where it's like, Willard certainly went out and got more guys than Tom Izzo did, but there's like this stubbornness and we're going to play this certain way. I mean, I don't want to tie this back to Brad Underwood, but like one thing I know about Brad Underwood is like, he's going to go recruit guys and he's going to mesh the team around those guys. He's not going to say, hey, here's my template. Who can I shove into this template? And that's what it feels like year after year, Kevin Willard seems to do.
I mean, Turgeon, I get it. They wanted it to reach big championship levels, get past the Sweet 16, all that. But the talent that went through there, man, like you're just mentioning, Kevin Huerter, Jalen Smith, Aaron Wiggins, Bruno Fernando, Anthony Cowan, like Melo Trimble, like it was a pretty dang good run for Maryland. And I'll say this, like that's a passionate fan base for basketball, but they can be fickle. Like they don't show up when they're bad, like when they're strong. But when they're good, that place is a top 5 arena in the Big Ten when they're good. So
we played them my senior year when they were, or maybe it was 2015 when they won the league, or 2016. Indiana won the league. Whatever year, I think was one of their first years in the league. Yeah. We went and played at Maryland. I had obviously never been there before. I mean, it is like, and they had it rocking. I mean, Jeremy, you've seen it, right? Like that behind the basket that's by the bench, the Illinois bench, the visiting team's bench, that thing goes up to the sky, like straight up, and they are right on top of you. They need to find a way to recapture that home court advantage because, 2 years ago they were an NCAA tournament team that won one road game because of that home court advantage. That is such an asset for that program, and they just need to find a way to generate some buzz. And that right now, like with the roster, it's going to have to come in the form of winning games.
I like that we hit on Maryland. I think we've hit on every team now in some way. Any last nuggets, guys? Anything to get out?
I have no more good texts.
No, I think that's it. I'm looking through. I really do think we touched them all. Yeah. I think we got everybody, and that's I slipped Washington in there, so I think we're good there. We don't need to dive into a team that I think is. Last point here.
Yeah,
I need clarification on this. Is it implemented this year? The top 15 teams go to the Big Ten tournament.
No, let me check.
That's a good question.
Because I think like another category or like the way we can phrase some of these teams is like, hey, are they a fringe Big Ten tournament team?
Yeah, kind of
as opposed to being an NCAA tournament team. Like that's, I don't know. Like does Washington shock everybody and make the Big Ten tournament this year?
That's a good way of doing it. Yeah,
it's an interesting discourse for someone.
Penn State would be that team for me, probably.
I mean, I think it makes the end of the season even more interesting when you got like, no longer are you like strolling into. You're strolling in, I guess, whatever, Tacoma. I don't know where is Washington at? It's Seattle.
Seattle.
Okay, yeah, you're strolling into Seattle, and it's like, hey, we got Washington, who's 6-13 in conference. It's like, well, they're actually playing for a Big Ten tournament berth here, so you can't. It's not just a rollover situation. I think that's an interesting wrinkle.
It will expand to 15 teams for next year. So, so 3 teams be left out. It's bad. The bad spot to be.
Jeremy, who's your sneaky Big Ten tournament contender?
It's probably Penn State. I mean, because most people are considering Penn State out of it, right? Like, I mean, I'm just looking at the Torvik numbers right now, but old team, return a lot. Yeah, I go with it. They'd care about it. Like, I think for Penn State, that'd be kind of a deal. So, yeah, I'd probably go with them.
I was going to say, I think the 3 teams that are projected to miss that right now are the 3 oldest teams in the league, which is crazy.
Well, so didn't Torvik implement like some talent, like adjusted talent thing, and
that's why Illinois jumped up because of the adjusted talent that they've added, basically like BPR, which is like an individual rating for each player, just trying to add that for transfers because it's been hard for his system to necessarily evaluate like how good a transfer is and what his fit is in a specific roster and into the algorithm.
All right. Well, clearly Bart Torvik is on the same wavelength with me with the Big Ten teams getting an NCAA tournament because he has 15 teams in the top 50. So,
all right, let me throw one last one at you because Derek Piper and I are going to do a podcast just talk about Illinois and trying to figure out the leaders in stat categories for them, which is fun activity for this one. Who leads Illinois in scoring this year?
Yeah, I think it's Kylan still for me, just because I think KJ actually helps him score more points. Just like the KJ distributing gets Kylan a little bit more chance to be a scorer. And I love the offseason buzz of like guys that are like struggling this in the summer. It's like I don't care. Like I really honestly don't care. But yeah, I would say Kylan for me.
Boswell's a good pick.
Buy into the hype. Buy into the hype. I know you want to.
Yeah, no, Boswell's a good pick. I'll zag a little bit here. And maybe you can throw this into my hot take category. I'll go Trey White.
Oh, there you go.
Like I think he's gonna play a lot, and I think that matters. But it's however you're gonna look at leading scorer on this team, I think there's going to be so many guys that play between 22 to 28 minutes a game for this team that like there probably isn't going to be like a 17 point per game scorer or
That's
more.
That's why I don't hate Trotter's pick of Kylan Boswell, just because
like it's balanced, right? And I think Boswell's a perfect guy to be in that like, 13 to 14 point per game range. Like he might lead the team at like 13.8 points per game, but it's going to come down to opportunity where like that's the Kasparis argument. Cause like that dude's going to have the ball in his hands a lot.
And you know what else he does, Mike? Gets to the free throw line.
He does.
And just that's so many easy points.
Cheat code.
Yeah,
so also, I would just like to say, like, the Trey White glow up in the last like few months since he committed is hilarious to me, because like when that name first popped up as like Trey White is committing to Illinois, like it was like, oh my God, like what are they doing? Like this is a horrible fit for all of these things. And then like they add the stretch bigs, like, oh, that starts to make a lot more sense. And the summer buzz starts to come in. It's just funny how like a fan base kind of like reacts to a certain player joining their team.
Well, it's like, oh wait, he's 6'7" and has good defensive tools. He didn't guard anybody last year, and neither did anybody else on his Louisville team, but has good defensive tools. I think he's surprised some people with his ability to facilitate a little bit. And I think being 6'7" and having like a decent handle helps that. We'll see what the heck he does from the outside this year. I said it, like he was 2 for 12 or whatever it was off the dribble from 3 last year. And if you take that out, he becomes a 34%, 33% 3-point shooter. And I think you'll take that if you're Illinois. So I'll pose this as a question here as we continue to roll on. I would not
be shocked if there were 5 guys in double figures.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Oh, I'll say this: over under 12.5 3-point attempts for Ty Rodgers this year.
That's a great conversation.
As someone who loves betting a little bit, probably too much, I will take the under. I love betting unders, so I will take the under on that.
The attempts
is an inherent.
What would you get? What would you say for makes? Because that's where I'm.
That's a whole different story, man. And I'll say this: the makes total is going to determine how many of his, like, if he takes, let's say he takes 5 in the first 8 non-conference games. The makes are going to be the makes for the rest of the season are going to be determined by how many he makes of those first 5, right? Like if he starts 0 for 5, I think he's going to get a little gun shy. But if he goes 2 for 5 on his first 5 attempts, like he may cruise past that 12.5.
Yeah, if he's 2 for 3 against Oakland, look out, Alabama.
Well, because he's not going to be guarded.
Yeah,
he's just not. Like they're gonna say prove it, right? Like I think it's what's fascinating about Avicic too, is Avicic, like prior to this past year, there weren't like any real notable 3-point shooting numbers, and it was like part of the reason why when you watched him in Europe, no one guarded him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he made shots. So I'm curious this year if like teams are like, hey, we think you're more of 2 years ago in Europe than last year. Or are they going to guard him like he's a legitimate 42% 3-point shooter like he was this year? I think all that's fascinating, probably for an entirely another pod.
No. Jeremy, are you going to ask us who's going to lead the Illinois in rebounding? Because I have a hot take, I think, on that one too.
I mean, I would go Ty Rodgers, but who are you going with?
I went Avicic just because of drop coverage. Drop coverage mavens like get extra rebounds. It's kind of like a cheat code. If he plays a lot of drop, he's got a chance to get him. I think also Ty, like, are you playing him and Trey White together? So if you expect Trey to play a lot, like how many minutes can you guarantee for Ty? So Ty was my second choice, but I went Avicic.
Does Merez Johnson play anywhere near 20 minutes a game? Because I think if he does, he's a
well, that's what I was going to say. If you told me Avicic maybe doesn't translate as well, like all of a sudden, Merez Johnson's rebound rate is going to be insane. Like that's.
Well, I wonder too, because Nana Egwu didn't have great rebounding numbers, and other guys on the team did, because Nana Egwu was boxing out. Like there's with Avicic too, like in drop, there may be a situation where he's either contesting a floater or, has to kind of take the roll guy as he's trying to seal and has to put a body on him to have like these other guys fly in. So I don't know. Like, again, like I don't see anybody on this team being like 8 rebounds a game.
Yeah,
right. That's probably going to be super balanced as well. I think the overarching theme here is that Illinois is going to be super balanced on a lot of different fronts. Namely, like I think the way they run offense is going to be pretty balanced. There's going to be some back downs. There's going to be some pick and roll. There's going to be, I think they're going to play fast. Like, there's a lot there, to like.
I'm cutting you guys off because you're stealing our thunder for the next pod.
Shoot. All right.
I'm just cutting you off from this point. This was fantastic, guys. I know it was a longer pod, but this was so enjoyable, and we could get all these thoughts out. Now I know a little bit more about Big Ten basketball, but I still don't know how we're going to figure this out. We'll leave with this. Mike, where you got Illinois in your power rankings?
2.
Isaac?
I went with them at 4, but like just right behind UCLA, Indiana, and Purdue, right next to Oregon. So it's like I think off those 5 teams, they're like in a tier together.
Awesome. Isaac Trotter, Mike LaTulip, thank you, boys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.